I used to believe that love meant loyalty, even when it hurt. Back then, Noah's voice was the only one that could silence my doubts. He'd hold my hands, look straight into my eyes, and say, "Trust me, Paris, some things are better left unsaid." And I did. I kept silent when the audit reports didn't add up, when Owen's emails went missing, when Henry's name was dragged through whispers in boardrooms. I buried every question beneath my heartbeat for him. Noah said he was fixing everything. Viola, my best friend, told me to stop worrying and enjoy life. But late at night, when I sat alone staring at the flickering light in our apartment, I could feel something breaking not outside, but inside me. I told myself it was love, that protecting him meant protecting us. But I didn't know that silence could cost more than truth ever could. The night the police came to our door, Noah wasn't home. His files were gone. My name was on every document. The scandal was everywhere by morning. And while reporters camped outside my building, Noah vanished, leaving me to carry the blame. That's when I learned that loyalty isn't love. It's a leash, and I had worn mine proudly. But that night, I made a promise to myself. If my silence built his empire, my voice would destroy it. The next morning, my name was on every news headline. Accountant caught in corporate fraud scandal. Paris Cole under investigation for embezzlement. They called me greedy, heartless, a liar. No one mentioned that I was Noah's girlfriend, or that I'd only signed those papers because he asked me to. Viola didn't answer my calls. Owen denied ever knowing me. Henry's lawyers wanted statements. And Noah, he disappeared like smoke. I spent hours at the police station, trembling under fluorescent lights while they questioned every decision I had made. My mind screamed his name, Noah, please come back. But deep down, I knew he wouldn't. He had planned this. Every signature, every missing file, every whispered assurance that everything would be fine. By evening, I was suspended from work. My accounts were frozen. The apartment we shared, his apartment, was locked. Even the doorman wouldn't meet my eyes. I walked through the rain, clutching a single suitcase filled with the little dignity I had left. And still, I couldn't cry. Because the worst part wasn't losing my job or reputation. It was realizing that every "I love you" had been a lie rehearsed to perfection. That night in a cheap motel room, I replayed every moment between us. The charm, the kisses, the promises. And I understood something for the first time. Noah hadn't just stolen my name. He had stolen my silence and used it to bury me alive. 3 days after my world collapsed, I saw her, Viola. My best friend, my sister in everything but blood. She found me at a small cafe downtown, pretending it was by accident. She wore a cream blazer, diamonds on her wrist, and that same soft smile that once comforted me. "Paris," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. "I've been so worried." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But something in her eyes betrayed her, a flicker too quick to miss, like satisfaction hiding beneath pity. She offered to help me, said Owen could speak to the investigators. But when I mentioned Noah's name, her expression hardened. She looked away and stirred her coffee. "Maybe it's time you stop depending on him," she said quietly. "People change." People change. Her tone made my skin crawl. When she left, she hugged me a long, slow hug and whispered, "Don't make things worse than they are." That was when I knew. She wasn't worried. She was warning me. Later that night, I scrolled through social media, and there they were, Viola and Noah, standing together at a charity gala. Her hand on his chest, both smiling under the flash of cameras. The caption read, "Business partners and longtime friends celebrate success." I stared at her smile until my phone went dark. The betrayal didn't break me. It shaped me. Because from that moment on, my silence wasn't protection. It was preparation. I didn't pack much the night I left the city. Just a few clothes, my worn-out notebook, and the last bit of courage I had left. The noise of the world had turned against me, every whisper, every camera flash, every headline reminding me that I was the villain in someone else's story. So I vanished. No goodbyes, no explanations, just silence. For months, I lived in a small coastal town 3 hours away, a place where no one knew my name or my shame. I worked in a flower shop by day, wrote in my notebook at night, and watched the tides wash over everything I wanted to forget. But pain has a way of reshaping you. Every time I thought about Noah's betrayal, or Viola's soft, lying smile, the hurt hardened into something else: focus. The world thought I was gone, destroyed, forgotten. Good, let them believe it. Because in that silence, I rebuilt myself. I studied every legal file, traced every missing fund, and followed every digital footprint Noah left behind. What I discovered made my blood run cold. It wasn't just greed. It was a network. Owen, Viola, even Henry's company was a pawn in their game. And the best part, they all thought they had won. But silence is a dangerous thing. It gives you time to listen. And time to plan. That night, under the dim glow of my lamp, I wrote the first line of my new story. To destroy a liar, become the truth they fear. It started with a name. Stella. She was a journalist, sharp, curious, the kind who could smell a secret before it had a voice. I found her by accident, or maybe fate led me there. She had once covered the same scandal that ruined me. Her article was the only one that hinted that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the monster everyone believed. I sent her an anonymous message that night. Nothing detailed, just a breadcrumb, a number, a date, and the phrase, "Follow the money." Then I waited. 2 days later, her headline appeared. Corporate scandal deeper than reported. New evidence emerges. The story didn't name Noah or Owen directly, but it was enough to make investors nervous. And for the first time in months, I smiled. I wasn't after quick revenge. I wanted them to feel what I had felt: doubt, fear, the slow unraveling of control. Each night, I studied more. I traced every deal Viola signed, every account Owen transferred, every charity Noah suddenly started sponsoring. The pieces fit perfectly. They had rebuilt their empire on the ashes of my name. But this time, I wasn't the naive girl who trusted too easily. I was the shadow they didn't see coming. Revenge wasn't just a plan anymore. It was a pulse, steady, cold, and patient. And with Stella's help, I had just lit the first spark. The first time Noah saw me again, he didn't realize it was me. I was standing at the back of the investors' conference hall. Dressed in black, my hair shorter, my confidence sharper. From a distance, I watched him speak, polished as ever, his lies wrapped in charm. He talked about honesty, growth, and second chances. The irony almost made me laugh. Viola sat beside him, glowing in designer silk. They looked powerful, untouchable. But beneath those practiced smiles, I could see it, the unease creeping into Noah's eyes as questions from the press turned toward unverified transactions and missing funds. Stella had done her part beautifully. When the conference ended, I slipped a note into Owen's assistant's folder. No signature, just 3 words written in ink he'd recognize anywhere. "You're being watched." By evening, my message had reached all of them. Owen called Noah in panic. Viola posted an old picture of us online with a caption, "Some ghosts never stay buried." They thought it was a warning to the world. But it was a message for me. And I smiled, because they were right. The ghost they buried was learning to walk again, quietly, gracefully, and with purpose. I didn't need confrontation. Not yet. Fear would do the work for me. Let them see my shadow. Let them whisper my name. The real storm was still coming. Revenge doesn't always start with a shout. Sometimes it begins with a whisper. I learned that people don't need proof to destroy trust, just suggestion, spoken in the right ear at the right time. So I began to whisper. A rumor here. A secret there. Each one crafted with care. I told Stella to leak a line about an anonymous investor backing Owen's rivals. I made sure Viola overheard a conversation about Noah's private meetings with a mysterious woman. And through a disposable phone, I sent Noah an email from an untraceable address, a single sentence that froze him in place. Viola isn't as loyal as you think. Within days, the cracks appeared. Viola canceled a charity dinner without explanation. Owen pulled out of a deal at the last minute. Noah started calling people late at night, desperate, defensive, demanding control. From my small apartment, I watched their perfect world tremble. It wasn't about chaos for its own sake. It was about balance, restoring what they stole from me. They had built their empire on deceit, and I would make them doubt every truth they thought they owned. Reuben, my only remaining contact in Henry's company, kept me updated quietly. He didn't ask questions, just passed along what I needed to know. And each time he said, "They're starting to panic," I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Because whispers, when used wisely, can sound a lot like justice. Reuben had always been the quiet one, steady, patient, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. Back when everything fell apart, he was the only person who didn't look at me like a criminal. So when he called and said, "We need to talk," I knew something had shifted. We met in an old cafe near the harbor, the kind of place where time moved slower and secrets could breathe. He looked older, more tired, but his eyes still held that calm wisdom I remembered. "I know what you're doing, Paris," he said softly, stirring his coffee, "and I'm not here to stop you." For a moment I froze. He slid a folder across the table, documents, contracts, bank transfers, all leading back to Owen and Viola. My breath caught as I saw Henry's signature forged among them. "They used Henry's company to clean Noah's stolen money," Reuben explained. "If this gets out, they all fall." I looked at him carefully. "Why are you helping me?" He smiled faintly. "Because the truth deserves a voice, and you deserve to get yours back." I stared at the folder, the weight of it sinking into my hands. This wasn't just evidence, it was power. But Reuben wasn't done. He leaned closer, his tone lowering. "There's one more thing you should know. Someone inside Noah's circle is feeding him information. Be careful who you trust." The air felt colder after that. Because in the world I was walking back into, truth was a weapon, and even allies had shadows. For days, I couldn't shake Reuben's warning. Someone inside Noah's circle is feeding him information. But who? I had been careful, every message encrypted, every move calculated. Yet somehow, Noah always seemed one step ahead. Someone was talking. I started to test them, small traps. A fake lead sent through Stella, a rumor about a government inquiry into Henry's company. Another whispered through a former coworker, suggesting Owen had plans to expose Noah. By the third day, the pattern was clear. Only one rumor reached Noah fast enough for him to react. Viola. She had been pretending to play the loyal partner, feeding Noah information behind Owen's back, and she was doing it beautifully. Her social media posts, her casual interviews, even the timing of her appearances, they were all signals. The realization burned deep. I remembered her hug, her soft voice, her false concern. She wasn't just part of Noah's betrayal, she was his weapon. But now, she was about to become mine. I spent that night crafting a new trap, one so perfect that Viola wouldn't resist. I would give her something too tempting to ignore, a secret about Noah that would make her believe she finally had the upper hand. By morning, I had written it all down, a story that would spread faster than truth ever could. If she took the bait, Noah's empire would begin to eat itself from within. And I'd be right there, watching the cracks widen. I knew exactly how to bait Viola, vanity and greed. She'd always wanted more than what she had, even when it was already mine. I crafted the story carefully, a rumor disguised as opportunity. Through a trusted contact, I sent her an email under a new name, Elena Cole, an international investor looking to fund Noah's next big project. I added one detail I knew she couldn't resist. "Noah doesn't have to know." By morning, Viola replied. Polite at first, curious next, and within hours, eager. I arranged a meeting through a fake company address. Not in person, of course. I wanted her to believe she was gaining secret control over Noah's finances. What she didn't know was that the documents she requested to impress her mysterious investor were laced with the same false data Noah had used to frame me years ago. She sent everything willingly. Every file, every email, every hidden transaction. Stella received the minutes later and knew what to do. By nightfall, an anonymous article went live. New evidence suggests internal fraud in Owen Holdings. The internet erupted. Viola's name was everywhere, tied to the fraud, not Noah's. Noah panicked. Owen accused Viola. And Viola, she called him 27 times that night. He didn't answer once. From my quiet apartment, I watched the headlines grow. For the first time in years, Noah was silent. And Viola. She had just learned that silence doesn't always protect. Sometimes it condemns. The trap had closed. The news spread faster than wildfire. Every major outlet was talking about the fraud scandal at Owen Holdings. And for once, Noah couldn't control the narrative. I watched a live broadcast of him outside his office. His smile tight, his jaw clenched, his voice trembling as he told reporters that everything was under review. He looked confident to everyone else. But I knew that look. It was fear wearing charm as a disguise. By evening, his calls to Viola went unanswered. Owen had already withdrawn half the company's funds to protect himself, and investors were pulling out faster than he could lie. Stella sent me a message. "He's cracking. Whatever you're doing, it's working." But this wasn't about satisfaction anymore. It was precision. I didn't want Noah destroyed in a single blow. I wanted him to crumble piece by piece, exactly the way he had made me fall. I sent another anonymous tip to a financial watchdog, exposing a link between his charity foundation and offshore accounts. It wasn't even fake. It was one of the very secrets I'd kept for him years ago. That night, the story broke again. Another wave, another headline. Charity funds under investigation. CEO denies misuse. And still, I remained invisible. I closed my laptop, took a deep breath, and whispered to the silence around me. "You should have never taught me how to keep secrets, Noah." Because now, every truth I'd once buried was a weapon with his name on it. Henry Whitmore was a name that once terrified me. Back then, he was the company's chairman, powerful, feared, and the man whose reputation I nearly destroyed without knowing it. When Noah framed me, it was Henry's trust that shattered first. He believed I had stolen from his company. I could still remember the coldness in his eyes the last day I saw him. So when Reuben said Henry wanted to meet, my heart hesitated. We met in his office, high ceilings, glass walls, and that heavy scent of authority that never leaves men like him. He looked older now, quieter, as if the years had taught him that power doesn't always protect. "I almost didn't agree to this," he said, pouring coffee into 2 cups. But Reuben insisted. I nodded. "I'm not here for forgiveness. I'm here for truth." He studied me, not the girl he once fired, but the woman who had learned to survive. Reuben handed him the documents we'd gathered, the forged signatures, the missing transactions, the trail that led straight to Noah and Owen. Henry read in silence, his expression tightening with every page. When he looked up, there was no anger left, only disbelief. "They used my company as a front," he whispered. "Yes," I said softly, "and they used my name to cover it." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he reached for my hand. "Tell me what you need, Paris." For the first time since everything began, I felt the scales shift. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. There's a moment in every storm when the wind changes, not louder, just sharper. That was how it felt the day Henry chose to stand beside me. We met in his private study, the blinds drawn, the city humming faintly outside. Reuben sat quietly by the window, his calm presence grounding us all. Henry placed the folder between us, the same one that once condemned me. Only now it held the truth. "I want this exposed," he said. But not recklessly, we'll do it by the book. A part of me admired that. The man still believed in order, in rules. But I had learned that rules are what people like Noah use to stay safe. We can't win playing clean, I said softly. We'll need to outsmart them, not outtalk them. Reuben nodded. Then we start with Owen. He's the weak link. Henry frowned. You think he'll betray Noah? I smiled faintly. He already has. He just doesn't know it yet. We began mapping it out, a careful, quiet plan. Henry would reopen an internal audit, giving me access under a new identity. Reuben would handle the digital traces. And Stella, she would be our voice when the time came to speak. For the first time in years, I felt purpose again. Not as the victim they ruined, but as the storm they created. As we stood to leave, Henry said something that stayed with me. They took your silence, Paris. Make sure they choke on it. And I intended to. 2 weeks later, I became someone else. Elena Carter, quiet, efficient, invisible. Henry made it easy. The audit team needed a temporary analyst to assist with internal reviews. My credentials were flawless, my identity scrubbed clean. On paper, I was just another consultant. In truth, I was walking straight into Noah's empire, the same one he built on my silence. The first day back inside those glass walls felt unreal. The scent of fresh coffee, the echo of heels on polished floors, the sound of laughter I used to know too well. And then I saw him. Noah. He walked through the lobby like he still owned the world, tailored suit, confident smile, a man untouched by guilt. He didn't recognize me, not yet. But I saw the tension behind his charm. His eyes darted too often. His smile lingered too long. He was trying to keep his world from collapsing. I spent hours at my new desk, reviewing files I once signed years ago. Only now I could see the patterns clearly. Transfers hidden in plain sight. Fake donors under Viola's name. Offshore payments marked as consulting. Every number was a confession, written in data. Reuben texted me that night. He doesn't know you're in yet. Keep it that way. And I would, because this time I wasn't here to love or to protect. I was here to collect the pieces of my ruined life and hand them back, one by one, to the people who destroyed it. Under a new name. With an old purpose. It happened on my 3rd day back. I was bent over a file when I heard his voice, smooth, confident, and painfully familiar. Miss Carter, right. My hands froze mid-page. When I looked up, Noah was standing in front of my desk. That same charming smile, that same expensive cologne. For a second, time twisted, and I was back in the office years ago, still believing he loved me. But Elena Carter didn't flinch. Yes, sir, I said evenly. I'm with the audit team. We're reviewing last quarter's statements. He tilted his head slightly, studying my face. Have we met before? I smiled politely. I don't believe so. He chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. You just seem familiar. The irony nearly made me laugh. He was staring at the woman whose life he'd buried, and he didn't even see the ghost he created. Carry on, Miss Carter, he said finally and walked away. I watched him leave, his shoulders tense, his phone already at his ear, barking orders. He was unraveling even if he didn't know why. That night, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't Paris anymore, at least not the one he'd destroyed. She was colder, smarter, patient. And though my heart still trembled from seeing him, my resolve didn't. I whispered to the mirror, You remember me now, Noah. You will. Because next time we met, it wouldn't be as strangers. It would be as enemies. Noah wasn't the only ghost in that building. Viola worked just 2 floors above me, still radiant, still smiling, still pretending she hadn't stolen everything I once had. She had traded guilt for luxury and wore it like perfume, but what she didn't know was that I had become her shadow. Every week, she sent private emails to Noah about company issues, about upcoming audits, and occasionally about him. The tone was flirtatious, possessive. I made sure Henry saw every single one. Ruben helped me route a copy of one email to Noah himself, disguised as a system glitch. Viola's little secret messages, now sitting right in his inbox. By morning, the building buzzed with whispers. Noah's assistant said he'd slammed his office door so hard the glass shook. Viola spent the day pretending not to care, but her smile cracked around the edges. At lunch, I passed her in the cafeteria. She looked straight at me, unaware that the woman behind the Alina Carter badge had once watched her kiss Noah in secret. "Rough day?" I asked casually. She gave a stiff smile. "Just office politics." "Careful," I said, stirring my coffee. "Sometimes politics can ruin more than reputations." Her eyes flickered, just a second of unease, and that was all I needed. Because doubt, once planted, grows quietly. And soon, it would bloom into chaos. For the first time, I wasn't chasing justice, I was orchestrating it. And the music had just begun. By the next week, the air in the building had changed. Conversations stopped when doors opened. Eyes darted before every whisper. It was the kind of tension that smells like fear, subtle, but unmistakable. Noah moved differently now. His usual arrogance had turned into suspicion. He started calling random team meetings, asking for loyalty and transparency. Words that sounded noble, but to anyone who knew him, they meant one thing: paranoia. From my desk, I watched him hover near Viola's office more than once. Their meetings got shorter, their smiles tighter. Ruben texted me late one afternoon. "He's checking her calls. You've done it." I allowed myself a small smile. The trap was working. But I didn't underestimate Viola. She was too clever, too proud, too used to winning. I knew she'd start sensing something. So I left her breadcrumbs, little hints that someone was feeding information to the audit team. Anonymous memos, subtle questions, numbers highlighted in red. By Friday, she cornered me in the hallway. "Miss Carter, right?" she said, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "Yes, ma'am," I replied smoothly. "You've been spending a lot of time near Noah's office," she said. "Auditing must be interesting." I met her gaze. Sometimes the truth hides in the most familiar places. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. And as she walked away, I knew she was starting to suspect everyone. Exactly what I wanted. Because suspicion, once it starts, never really stops. It devours everything. The next phase required precision, not destruction, not yet. Just a small leak enough to make Noah and Viola turn on each other completely. Ruben called it controlled chaos. I called it justice in slow motion. That morning, I sent a confidential report to a journalist, not a full exposé, just a taste. A few carefully chosen figures, a few dates, and one familiar name: Viola Lancaster. By noon, the story was live. Sources reveal executive misconduct at Owen Holdings. No faces, no direct quotes, just enough to sting. I stayed quiet, watching it unfold. Viola stormed into Noah's office less than an hour later, her voice sharp even through the closed door. Everyone pretended not to listen, but you could feel the tension bleeding into the hallway. "You think I did this?" she snapped. "Who else had access?" he fired back. Through the glass, I saw his hand slam against the desk. Viola's eyes flashed, fury, fear, maybe both. They were collapsing under their own lies, and I was the quiet wind pushing the walls. Later that evening, Stella called me from her newsroom. "You're making headlines, even if no one knows it's you." I smiled faintly, tracing the edge of my coffee cup. Let them tear each other apart first. The truth deserves a clean stage. Because I didn't need to expose them, not yet. All I needed was for them to suspect each other enough to start digging their own graves. And they were already halfway there. Desperation has a sound. It's the echo of hurried footsteps in marble hallways, the tremor in a voice that's used to control but no longer can. And that week, every sound in the building belonged to Viola. The article had shaken her more than I expected. She was suddenly cautious, checking who entered her office, whispering on her phone, avoiding eye contact with Noah. She didn't know the walls had started closing in. Then, one afternoon, Ruben sent me a text. "She's reaching out to Henry, wants a meeting." I smiled. Of course she did. When people like Viola feel the ground slipping, they look for old power to hold on to. Henry agreed to meet her, his expression unreadable when I briefed him. "Let her come," he said. "I want to hear what she thinks she can save." I watched the footage from the security feed later. Viola sat across from him, all charm and false innocence. "Someone's trying to ruin us," she said. "If the board believes these rumors, everything collapses." Henry leaned back in his chair. "Then perhaps you should tell me what's true and what's rumor." She hesitated. Her silence said enough. When she left, Henry called me. "She's lying through her teeth," he said, "and scared." "Good," I whispered. "Let fear do the work for us." Because fear makes the guilty confess, not to the law, but to their own undoing. And soon, Viola's fear would push her straight into the next trap. It happened late one evening, long after most of the staff had gone home. The office was quiet, the kind of silence that hums with secrets. I was finishing a report when I heard footsteps behind me. "Miss Carter," he said softly. "Noah." He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. Gone was the man who once believed himself untouchable. What stood before me was someone cracking at the seams. "Do you ever wonder," he said, leaning on my desk, "how quickly people turn on you when things go wrong?" I met his gaze, calm and unreadable. "Maybe that depends on the kind of people you keep." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You sound like her." My heart skipped. "Her." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Paris." She used to say things like that. Smart, sharp, until she betrayed me. I looked down, hiding the fire in my eyes. He went on, his voice low, bitter. "I trusted her, loved her maybe, but she lied, cost me everything. And now someone's trying to finish what she started." Every word felt like a blade against my patience. He didn't even realize I was the ghost sitting right in front of him. The woman he'd broken, rebuilt, and now sought comfort from. I closed my laptop gently. "Maybe she didn't betray you, Mr. Owen. Maybe you betrayed the wrong person." He stared at me, uncertain, something flickering behind his eyes. Then he nodded slowly. "You're different, Miss Carter. I can talk to you." And just like that, he trusted me again. Exactly what I needed. Once Noah began to talk, everything changed. He started calling me into his office for updates, though we both knew it wasn't about reports. It was about reassurance, the illusion of loyalty. He needed someone to trust, and I let him believe that someone was me. He told me about the board's pressure, about investors demanding explanations. Each word he shared became a piece of a puzzle I already knew how to solve. The more he spoke, the clearer his weakness became. He feared exposure more than failure. So I gave him a name. Quietly, casually. "Someone in accounting has been questioning transactions," I said. "A woman named Lillian. Maybe she's feeding outsiders." Lillian didn't exist, but the fear she sparked was very real. By morning, Noah had ordered a full internal inquiry. The office buzzed with panic, everyone second-guessing everyone else. Viola stormed into his office twice. Henry played his part perfectly, feigning concern, asking just the right questions. Meanwhile, Ruben tracked every move. The fake audit files we'd planted were being copied, forwarded, analyzed. Noah was chasing shadows, our shadows. When Stella called that night, her voice was thrilled. "Every outlet's sniffing around. He's running out of air." I stood by my window, watching the city lights shimmer like secrets waiting to be told. The man who once demanded my silence was now trapped by his own lies. And this time, every lie had my fingerprints on it. The storm was closing in, perfectly timed, perfectly placed. All that was left was to let it break. Desperation makes even the clever lose their balance. And Viola, she was starting to slip. The pressure was eating her alive. The fake inquiry Noah had started had turned her world upside down, staff questioning her, investors calling her at odd hours, her perfect image cracking under invisible hands. Then came the mistake. A single, panicked email. She sent it to an anonymous journalist, trying to leak a smaller story, hoping it would redirect the attention away from her. What she didn't know was that Ruben had already intercepted her network. The journalist she wrote to wasn't real. It was us. In that message, she attached files, company statements, private communications, and one explosive record linking Noah's foundation to offshore laundering. When Henry saw it, he didn't even smile. He just said quietly, "She's done." We sent the file to Stella, who moved like lightning. By morning, the headlines screamed. CEO under investigation. Inside sources reveal offshore scandal. Noah's face was everywhere. His smile, his empire, his lies, all unraveling in public view. And Viola, she didn't come to the office that day. Rumor had it she'd left the city. I watched it all unfold from my desk, calm, composed, untouchable. Ruben texted me. "You didn't even have to lift a finger. She destroyed him for you." I smiled faintly. "No," I replied. "She destroyed herself. I just gave her the silence to do it." Because sometimes, revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, patient, and perfectly timed. The empire fell faster than anyone expected. One day, he was on magazine covers. The next, he was dodging microphones and cameras outside his office. Noah Owen, the man who once thought himself untouchable, was now a headline written in past tense. Fraud, money laundering, corruption. Each word heavier than the last. Inside the building, chaos ruled. Staff whispered in corners, shredders ran nonstop, and the board called an emergency meeting behind closed doors. I watched from my desk, silent and composed, as everything he built crumbled the same way he'd watched me fall years ago. When he finally walked past me, he didn't look like the man I once loved. He looked smaller. Lost. "Miss Carter," he said, stopping by my desk. "You've been with the audit team since this began, right?" "Yes, sir." His voice cracked slightly. "Be honest with me. Do you think I can fix this?" I looked up at him, the man who once destroyed me with lies, now begging for truth. And I gave it to him. "No," I said softly. "You can't fix what was never built on honesty." He stared at me, something flickering in his eyes, recognition, confusion, maybe both. Then he walked away. That night, the board voted to suspend him indefinitely. His name was stripped from the company's walls before morning. I stood in the lobby, watching workers peel the gold letters off the glass doors. And for the first time in years, I felt the weight of silence lift. Justice wasn't loud, it was quiet, and it carried my name. The day he found out, the air itself felt different. Heavy, charged. Like the calm, before a storm that everyone knows is coming. I was leaving the office when I saw him waiting by the elevator, coat undone, tie loose, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he said it. "Paris." My heart didn't race, it didn't even tremble. The name simply echoed between us, like something sacred turned sharp. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely steady. "How long have you been standing right in front of me pretending?" I met his gaze, long enough to see what guilt looks like. He laughed bitterly. "So this was your revenge, watching me drown?" "No," I said quietly. "My revenge was showing you what drowning feels like without ever touching the water." He stepped closer, his anger flaring. "You ruined me." "You ruined yourself," I replied. "I just held up a mirror." The elevator doors opened, but neither of us moved. For the first time, there was no power in his eyes, no charm in his voice, only fear. He wanted to say something else, but the words never came. He just stared at me, as if realizing too late that the woman he buried had learned to rise quietly. When I walked away, I didn't look back. Some ghosts don't haunt a scare, they haunt to remind. And now, he would never forget mine. It ended not with screams, but with silence. The kind of silence that feels earned, like a breath you've waited years to take. A week after our confrontation, the investigation concluded. Evidence surfaced, every transfer, every false report, every secret account tied directly to Noah and Viola. Henry's team handed it to the authorities themselves. The morning news called it the collapse of Owen Holdings. To the world, it was a scandal. To me, it was closure. Noah's assets were frozen, his reputation erased. Viola's name vanished from the company directory. Reuben said she fled the country. Stella ran the story with a headline I would never forget. The truth always speaks, even after years of silence. I walked into the building one last time, not as Alina Carter, not as the woman he betrayed, but as the woman who survived. The gold letters on the glass door had been replaced. New name, new leadership. It was over. Henry met me in the lobby, his voice soft. You did it. I smiled faintly. No, the truth did. When I stepped outside, the city was alive again, sunlight breaking through the clouds, wind brushing against my face. For the first time, I wasn't running from my past. I was walking into my peace. Justice hadn't come from revenge alone. It came from silence, weaponized, refined, and returned to sender. As I walked away, I whispered into the wind. You took my voice, Noah, but you forgot silence remembers. And with that, my story ended exactly as it should. Quietly, completely.